I just got through watching Disney's new live action remake of Snow White, and boy, let me tell you, that movie was not very good. Now, I'm not going to say that there was nothing redeemable about this movie because, believe it or not, there was actually some stuff in this movie that I did enjoy. I think the best parts about this movie were probably the scenes that were callbacks to the original Snow White movie, although the original movie did do it better. Some things that I did like about this movie, though, was just the overall aesthetic. Particularly the dwarf's house and their property. I thought it looked pretty good and it matched that fantasy Disney style that they were going for. And something else that I liked about this movie were the animals. Now, compare that to other recent Disney live action remakes, and I use the air quotes because I'm thinking about The Lion King, where the animals looked so realistic that they weren't properly expressive. I think in this movie, they have that Sonic the Hedgehog medium to it where the animals look realistic enough where they seem to match in this setting, or at least they don't look so out of place. But at the same time, they're cartoony and expressive enough so they can still look properly cute. And it just works really well for this movie. Other than that, the best part about this movie was the scenes that were more reminiscent of the original Snow White movie. Although every single situation, they always had their own take at it. It never really did like a one-for-one translation. They always tried to have their own version of it. And I think the best that you can expect with this movie is something that's not necessarily terrible, but it's not as good as the original movie is. But more times than not, what they're doing is just bad. I think the best one of these scenes that was a callback to the original was the whistle while you work scene that we saw a little bit of in the trailer. Now, I don't like how they changed this one, though, for the most part, where you have Snow White leading the dwarfs and cleaning their own house versus her stumbling across the house and deciding to clean it because that's just how she is. And the dwarfs are grateful to her, so they allow her to stay. I think the way they went about it in this movie changed up the dynamic to a point where I didn't think it was very good, but still, I thought with the music and the choreography, that sequence was enjoyable enough. Now, as far as all the other scenes that were added to this movie, because like any other live action remake of a Disney movie, they extend out the plot so they can add more stuff to it. And all the added stuff that they had in this movie, I thought was actually pretty bad. But for the most part, it was just very forgettable. One of the things that surprised me about this movie, though, is you remember that early set photo that got leaked of the 7 characters that people were saying looked like hippies and other things like that? Well, it turns out those people were actually in this movie. Now, for the longest time on this channel, I've been talking about how Disney delayed the release of this movie so they can replace them with CGI dwarfs because they saw the reaction to it. Well, come to find out, they're actually in this movie, so I've been wrong about that one. However, it does feel like their part in this movie was severely diminished because they're barely in it whatsoever. In fact, I think between all of them, besides Jonathan, they might have like 5 lines and that's about it. I do know the set photos that we saw that were leaked were for pickup shots after the fact. And then since then, they delayed the movie a year. And then it was after that, that's when we saw the first images of the dwarves. And we never saw any images of these characters. So what I think happened is that they kind of changed the roles for these two groups where now instead of the bandits being the prominent leads with the dwarves kind of being a secondary character, they basically switched their roles so that the dwarfs were relegated to the role that they had in the original movie. And then these bandit group was kind of the afterthought. In the same vein as the scenes that were callbacks to the original Snow White movie, I felt the same way about the musical numbers and that the songs that are from the original Snow White movie were probably the best songs in this movie, although just not done as well. One example of this that I can think of is when they introduced the dwarfs in this movie, instead of having their song when they're in the mines, dig, 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 they basically had that as a mashup with that song and Hi Ho, but it was like Hi Ho on their way to the mine, then dig, 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 kind of a remix when they were in the mine. And in that song, they kind of used it as an opportunity to introduce all the dwarfs, which I think is fine. I didn't like what they were doing with it, but I'm okay with doing something like that. Except once they meet Snow White, they reintroduce themselves to her. So it just kind of served no purpose for the movie. It was basically just being different for the sake of being different. As far as all the original songs for this movie, however, I think they were forgettable at best and bad at worst. The best one of all of these is probably the Waiting on a Wish song, which is why I'm thinking that it was featured so prominently in all the marketing for this. However, in the movie, it didn't seem to hit the emotional beats that they were going for, but I will praise it because it at least feels like it belongs in a Snow White movie. Compare that to all the other original songs, especially Gal Gadot's Evil Queen song. I don't know why they thought to include a song and dance number like this in this movie, because if you've seen it, it feels like it's very out of place, but you know, that's just the way Disney's doing things these days, apparently. Gal Gadot's performance during this sequence, and much like the rest of the movie, felt out of place as well because, surprise, surprise, the woman can't act.
Max Lord, you're putting yourself and everyone else in grave danger. I need you to give me the stone. What happened to it?
Rachel Zegler was better because at least she was serviceable in some scenes, but in other scenes, it felt like she was just reading the lines that were written for her that morning. The worst part about this movie, though, is it felt like the filmmakers had disdain for the original Snow White movie, and we heard that from Rachel Zegler during her interviews in the past.
The original cartoon came out in 1937, and very evidently so. There is a big focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks her.
Yeah.
Weird.
Super weird.
So we didn't do that this time.
And once I watched this movie, you can see that that pretty much is the case. Even the scenes that were callbacks to the original Snow White movies felt like an afterthought, something that they just had to get through before they can move on and tell the story that they really wanted to tell. Even one of the more pivotal moments of the original movie, the whole poison apple scene, that was just kind of an afterthought where it was almost something that they could have just removed from the movie entirely and you wouldn't even have missed it, which is just saying something about it, because the story that they wanted to tell in this movie was that a society is more prosperous for everyone when it's essentially a communist society. And the way they resolved the conflict at the end of the movie, I thought was pretty stupid, with the queen behaving in a manner that I don't think she would have actually behaved. And the whole mirror saying that, oh, Snow White's the fairest because she has inner beauty, that's basically suggesting that all the years that the mirror was saying that the evil queen was the fairest was to suggest that she actually had inner beauty this whole time. I mean, come on, no one's buying that. The common theme to all this, if you haven't picked up on it by now, is that the original movie is the superior movie. Now, I'm not necessarily going to be begrudged just for not being as good as the original movie, because I think you can retell a Snow White story, but the problem with this one is they wanted to do their own thing, but at the same time, they were trying to pull on those member berries and try to be like the original Snow White movie, and they were trying to capture the audience and the fans of the original movie, so felt like they were trying to pay lip service to them, but without actually following through with it. And that's why I would say that this movie is a 3 out of 10. There are some things redeemable about it, but for the most part, it's completely unnecessary and you can skip this one. If you really want to watch a movie for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, just watch the original movie. And there's other versions of this story out there. Snow White and the Huntsman, Mirror, Mirror. You can watch those movies if you want to get a different take on it. But this one, I would just skip it entirely. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. And also, if you can, click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest in entertainment news, or check out some more of my movie reviews. And if you can, and if you like this video, click that like button and share this video out there because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.